Well, the story begins with Ben and Naomi's characters. They're married and everything seems fine on the surface, but maybe we kind of can tell that things aren't. Maybe they're not quite living up to the potential of both their own individual lives and also their lives as a couple. And they come across this younger couple played by Adam Driver and Amanda Seyfried who become a kind of source of inspiration for them and admiration and interest, and it kind of changes the course of their lives. Well, I wanted to do something about marriage and about couples, about how couples interact with each other, and that came with sort of dawning realization I was having in my own life that I was no longer 25. It was obvious to everybody else, but it was somehow news to me. But I mean, I think that feeling that you have, I mean, Ben even says it in the movie, he's like, you know, he says, well, we were just 25, and well, we weren't. But you know, he's sort of like, corrects himself immediately. But I think everybody has that feeling for a second, you know, like, you know, well, I'm still that age, I guess I'm not, you know, and what is that? And I wanted to kind of explore that. Trying to remember. I mean, I definitely had Ben in mind. He was the one actor I had in mind. Yeah, well, we'd worked on Greenberg and had a really good experience, and so I did have Ben's voice in my head when I was writing Josh. The notion of documentary came a little bit later. I mean, obviously in the midst of writing it, but I wanted a kind of artistic but also visual medium for them, so that it was something that would be interesting to see in a movie, and you could actually visualize differences in Grodin's movie, Ben's movie, Jamie's movie. And, you know, but of course, once I made a documentary, I had to take on the burden of investigating what that would mean and the sort of questions that are sort of baked into documentary filmmaking, truth in art. And it's sort of, in a way, heavier than I initially intended, but then I was like, well, I'm gonna have to do this. Well, Adam Driver I'd also worked with on Frances Ha. He was in one of the sections there, and I loved working with him. I love him as a guy, and he's so interesting. I find he's, as an actor, I mean, everything he does and says, I like lean into, and I felt like it was important that that guy be that compelling, because even though it's funny, but it's also, I didn't want to sell Ben's character out. I wanted you to understand why he could, you know, fall in love in some ways with this guy, and casting Adam kind of makes sense of that, you know, because he's so interesting. And you know, Naomi is somebody too, I mean, I've wanted to work with for a long time, and I've always felt she was really funny, and she's such a great dramatic actress that she often gets cast that way. But even Mulholland Drive has such humor in it, even though it's also very intense. And I knew she could both ground that character, but also have this sort of inner lightness.